are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
Thanks everyone who has joined. Thank you, Shadow Ventures and Shadow Summit, for having me here. I would like to share my screen and guide you through some of the things I put together today for you to talk about the topic of mobility and how it will change the future of real estate. So I'm guessing you should be able to see the screen well. So let's just carry on and kick it off. Who am I? As Kayla introduced me, I'm the Ventures Associate at Plug and Play, primarily focusing on the domain of mobility, IoT, that has to do with a lot of industrial stuff, as well as real estate and construction and smart cities. So these two topics that I will be addressing today are very near and dear to my heart. And there's a lot of ongoing things that I would love to share with you throughout this presentation today. Before that, quickly about Plug and Play and what I do there and what we are in general. We do quite a lot of different things. You can see it as an octopus with so many different legs. It's an innovation platform for large corporations. It's an early stage startup investor that typically is focusing on pre-seed, seed, and Series A companies. It's a business development innovation platform for these startup companies, as well as a host of hundreds of industry relevant events annually. And even now, during the global pandemic, when everything is virtual, we're still going forward with the events, with the programs and everything, similarly to what we have done in the past. It's a global platform. We have more than 35 offices worldwide, and in the work we work with large enterprises, large industry leaders that consist of 400 companies overall, and that spans across 15-ish different verticals, 4 of which include the ones I mentioned before, which would be my forte. On the investment side, a lot of portfolio companies also. We invest in more than 150 companies annually, and that is happening also across all of those different domains. Some of the success stories would include Honey, N26, Dropbox, one of the early investors in that company, as well as Soundhound Lending Club. Last year, 250 companies joined our portfolio, and the average check size was a little bit north from $100,000. We invest globally because of our global presence. So 2/3 of the investments would typically be done in the United States and the rest of them in Europe and all over the world. And as I said, since we are an early stage investor, the main chunk of the investments also will be happening in the seed stage. And all of this stuff that we are doing is powered by the digital version of Plug and Play, which is a playbook for data capturing and analytical purposes. But that's not why all of us are here today. We are here to talk more about mobility and how it will change the future of real estate. The transportation systems today have exhausted their capabilities to keep the world moving, mostly because the way our world moves has changed quite a bit as well. We as a society have to expand our perspective on mobility, what it entails, and what new technologies and service providers could emerge. Some time ago, automotive companies and industry consultants introduced the acronym CASE, which a lot of you might be familiar with. It's used to describe the vehicles of the future. It means that the focus is on making cars connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. Primarily, this framework has been used to describe trends in automotive innovation. However, you can't look at these technology areas in isolation, let alone develop them at an equal pace in parallel. Additionally, and maybe controversially, I don't think these 4 pillars nowadays are comprehensive enough and most likely could be updated to serve the better good. Before jumping into what they should be, in my opinion, let's quickly review what these 4 letters in the acronym stand for. So C would be talking about connected vehicles. Connected car is a car that can communicate bidirectionally with other systems outside of the car through local area network. This allows the car to share data with other devices, both inside and outside of the vehicle, like other cars, home, office, infrastructure, you name it. The connectivity in a vehicle enables infotainment, safety, roadside assistance, diagnostics, navigation payments, and many, many other things. And typically, the concept of connected vehicles seems like something in the distant future. In reality, quite a few cars today in the streets have internet connectivity. And for example, here's a couple of things from the news recently, where Waze has partnered with Shell and ExxonMobil. And when drivers arrive at those stations, a notification in the Waze app would prompt them to securely pay using the Fuel Partners contactless payment app. Or drivers in Austin, Texas can now use Google Pay directly within the Google Maps app on iOS or Android phones to pay for the parking. Moving forward, we have the second letter, which would be A, that stands for autonomous vehicles. An autonomous car is a vehicle capable of sensing its environment and operating without any human involvement. They combine a wide variety of sensors to perceive their surroundings and environment, and those sensors could include camera, radar, LiDAR, sonar, GPS, IMUs, and many, many other ones. Advanced control systems interpret the sensory information to identify appropriate navigation paths, as well as obstacles, and execute on the movement. I will not jump too deep into the level of autonomy, but the whole concept of self-driving cars consists of 6 levels, where level 0 would be the one where there is no automation happening, or level 5 is the one that would mean full autonomy. And in that case, the car would be able to perceive the environment and navigate on its own without any need of human intervention. Maybe to put this a little bit more in perspective, what we are more familiar with would be the level 3 autonomy, which basically is the autopilot of Tesla, where the car is able to perform specific tasks in certain environments, but there's still a need for a human to be present just in case there's a need to take over the navigation. Then moving forward, it would be the letter S, which stands for shared. Sharing in the context of mobility can be broadly defined as transportation services and resources that are shared amongst users, either concurrently or one after another. This includes public transit, micromobility, bike sharing, scooter sharing, car-based modes, and commute-based modes, like carpooling, for example. And then lastly, it would be about electric vehicles. An electric vehicle is a vehicle that completely or partially is driven by an electric motor, which draws its current either from storage batteries or from overhead cables. Some of the barriers to uptake include the perceived limited travel range of electric vehicles and access to convenient charging infrastructure that is known as range anxiety. Also, a lack of awareness of electric vehicles, uncertainty about the total cost of ownership, expectancy of battery life, and many, many other things. So this essentially is what the automotive players introduced as the innovation trends in the space that are also being addressed nowadays when it comes to the mobility sector. However, 3 of these elements are primarily with technological advancements. See them as the infrastructure for the future of mobility. Those would be connectivity, autonomy, and electrification. The last missing piece is sharing, which in its core is a behavioral change, partially enabled by these infrastructural changes. In short, it means that all of them cannot be developed simultaneously because of their fundamental differences. A platform business that falls under the shared economy umbrella connects users digitally, while the physical aspects of transportation and logistics are somewhat neglected. And the vision is certainly great, but in my opinion, the way to achieve the desired innovation is kind of flawed. Think about Uber, for example, the world's biggest taxi company that doesn't even own any cars. They built a platform that digitally connects passengers with drivers. Even though they are clearly dominating in the Western world, they are still losing money every year. Same is happening with other competitors that moved into this space. While the value proposition is there and the customers are able to benefit from the sharing economy, the economics still haven't been figured out, and profitability feels a little far. To achieve a higher level of financial sustainability, Uber and similar companies in the space are tapping into the autonomy component of the CASE acronym that we just covered. Uber's Advanced Technology Group, or ATG, is focused on developing self-driving capabilities, and it was valued at more than $7 billion pre-IPO, even though it is not generating any revenue. This is just one way to reassure that connectivity, autonomy, electrification, and sharing all don't really coexist in a normal environment in an economically viable way just yet. Therefore, I'd like to go back to my point made earlier that the case automotive companies and their consultants proposed a while back doesn't serve as great good in the shorter term and hopefully can be adjusted. Now let's see where the real estate domain is going. Once again, before we touch upon that, let's also see where the real estate industry is today and then discuss what the future could look like. And I don't really want to talk about the distant utopian ideas of shape-shifting skyscrapers that are connected by flying gardens, hovering cars, drone deliveries, or underground tunnels. I'd like to focus on more attainable innovation in the mid and short term. And let's start with this. What has been the very foundation of real estate? And I think you guessed it right, it's location. In the new era of mobility, the significance of it might get lower. As we have discussed earlier already, we are now developing driverless cars. Similarly to how regular vehicles transformed the cities of last century, another change is about to happen soon. Mobility forms the backbone of our lives, economy, and somewhat also real estate. Cities and urban metropolitan areas are heavily congested. There are not that many reliable and sustainable options for mass transit or private transport. The public transit structure is highly inefficient because the processes are not transparent, mobility data is siloed, and the systems for the most part are outdated. And the privately owned vehicles typically are just for personal use and take up a lot of space to transport just one human. Ride-sharing service provider vehicles are often idle, just cruising around the city while waiting for an occasional rider or until the rush hour hits. Then I would like to capture this little image, which is probably a little bit self-explanatory. First of all, if we are creating cars that don't need a driver, we can also have buildings with no parking lots. If the buildings of the future don't have parking, our cities will be unlike anything we are familiar with today. Nowadays, cities and urban areas mainly consist of separated neighborhoods and areas for specific kinds of buildings and use. And we have built wide and long highways to connect them, and we have developed large parking areas so everyone can have a designated space to leave their car when they arrive at their destination. It is also not uncommon for the parking space to be bigger than the building itself. And as we saw in the previous slides, cars take up a lot of space. And then in this kind of situation, the infrastructure itself is almost as big as a relatively small city in Siena, Italy. This interchanges of Houston, you guessed it right, it doesn't have any population, while the city of the same size has roughly 30,000 inhabitants. So the wild part to me is the fact that the global transport services market is valued at nearly $6.5 trillion. The size of the professionally managed global real estate investment market is valued at approximately 9.6 trillion. It is crazy to see that a market that is substantially smaller is actually dictating the future developments of the infrastructure for the environment we live in. Therefore, real estate today and likely in the future is not really that much about the location, but rather about transportation, about how to get there and how both domains complement each other. There is no doubt the industry will shift and we need to be prepared for that. The future of real estate is coming up against the trends of urbanization, demographic changes, as well as technological disruption, and that is happening all across the globe. There are, however, some of these benefits that self-driving cars would bring to the table, and we can certainly look forward to that. For example, savings. People will not need to own a car. That way, we will have the opportunity of repurposing garages and driveways. Savings from the transportation industry can be used for new housing opportunities. Parking lots could be turned into parks, driveways. Driveways could become patios. Autonomous revolution can be, and I'd like to emphasize, should be, rather about people and places and property value, and not robots. Cities could become more inclusive, more mobile. People with disabilities would be able to access all kinds of places because they don't need anyone to drive them anymore. Then it could also mean increase of productivity. People will be able to work as they go home. On the right-hand side, you can see some images from a patent Ford has filed for an artificial augmented reality display that is kind of built into the steering wheel. It means we'd be able to afford a home where we wanted and not really try to optimize for a shorter commute. And I know we all hate commute. Even though everyone is muted, I was able to hear the audible eye rolls. But this aspect is enough to make a person choose a home that is a bit further away than what is acceptable today to save on real estate or rent. And these savings could also be used to buy a bigger property or think about renewable energy and install, for example, solar panels. And then one little aspect I wanted to touch upon as well would be infotainment. People will consume, if not create, content on the go. Windows could become screens, the steering wheel might be a desk. People could enjoy the commute. The commute could be cheaper by eliminating the human driver. Companies could tap into larger labor markets, open new business locations, open new business operations, and just in general, invent new products. So just to sum that up, I would say that location will become quite ubiquitous and the power will be in our hand in the form of a smartphone. We can get to places faster without worrying, are we really there yet? And then cities can be repurposed and redesigned. The developments could be pushed further out of the cities. Now, if we go back to the very beginning of the article where I talk about congestion and traffic, we can now actually understand the underlying problem is density and not really location. Nowadays, as home prices rise and the available land becomes scarce, there is an increasing pressure to make homes smaller and increase the number of homes per acre of land. In a perfect world, workers would be living in smaller subdivisions surrounding their place of work. Instead, people are located in areas further away right now from the place of work based on affordability and quality of life, based on everyone's individual preferences or abilities. You can call it poor planning on a macro scale or just human nature, but in fact, that's just the reality. And then creating a new type of community on a smaller level could really be the future. If we collectively find ways to create environments where people can be in control and efficient, absolutely that could be the future. If there's a community where people can live, work, send kids to school, and purchase groceries, it could mean less commuting and people could focus on other things they care about and be more efficient in various ways. So primarily, the working could be happening from home when now that we have learned that during the pandemic, that a lot of us can actually do that. And then there could be some satellite offices or just remote co-working spaces for other situations. And in general, in my eyes, moving forward, people will need a reason to go to the office. And for the most part, it will be to collaborate and see others. What does the work environment need to look like for that? It would be more activity-based setting and less individual workspaces. That could be an answer here. So there's a great inefficiency in the things that we build right now. As the population grows, the things we build will be used more efficiently, and that's what we have to figure out moving forward. The global COVID-19 pandemic, as I mentioned, only adds another layer of complexity to that, but we have learned that we are able to do a lot of the work remotely. Creative workforce is looking for a choice. Can working from home and working from the office coexist? Probably, and preferably. A lot of people think it would enable them to do their best and increase their productivity, and that has to start with the workforce policy. Health and safety is the #1 priority, therefore we need to design the process keeping these components in mind. Giving choice and enablement to optimize people's time to focus on their obligations efficiently really is key in this situation. So that's about real estate side and where it's heading. Now, I would like to focus on our current world and drop the obsessive focus on autonomy and connectivity. I suggest that case is revisited and we focus on matters that could truly serve us in the short run and also go hand in hand with the vision of real estate in the future. So you should remember the Uber example earlier about how many of the existing solutions are far from being profitable. Transportation systems need to increase their capacity and to reduce the cost of mobility. So instead of focusing on the connectivity, which is kind of happening in there, we should be focusing on cost-effective transportation. Economies of scale apply when talking about moving people. and the larger the quantity of people transported, the lower the unit transport cost. On a daily basis, we make individual daily travel choices that often might not be the most efficient ones. If we can build transportation systems that are streamlined and cost efficient to manage and cheap for the end user, it will also shift the paradigm of driving only ourselves in a privately owned car. And then when it comes to buildings, it is impossible to summarize cost effectiveness by just one single parameter, but determining true cost effectiveness requires a life cycle perspective where all costs and benefits of a given project are evaluated and compared over its economic life. That has to do with operating and maintenance costs, energy efficiency, lifespan of the building, as well as the productivity and well-being of the people who will be utilizing that. Then the ideal world in which we will not have to own a car because of autonomy might not really happen that soon. Policy will not allow vehicles to move on their own. There will still be human-driven cars, which are kind of unpredictable. So I would propose that accessibility is something we can definitely address in the shorter term, and that would benefit the society overall. Many cities have outdated public transit networks powered by old systems. We need to be able to get around efficiently, and COVID-19 pandemic was an inflection point for us to realize that the existing transportation solutions are not really that effective. In real estate, accessibility of the buildings is equally important. City planners and investors should strongly consider the following when creating property development and investment strategies: the property's physical condition and efficiency, its proximity to retail, social, and recreational locations, school district quality, neighborhood development intensity, and so forth. And all of that should be connected by effective means of transportation, so people are actually able to get around, and the accessibility works on both fronts. Then shared mobility is the element of case that a lot of us have experienced firsthand already. Many people have chosen to not own a car. A big portion of the younger generation doesn't even get a driver's license nowadays. So we have to redefine the safety aspect in mobility beyond just reducing car crashes, which often is the main selling point of self-driving car importance. We also have to consider other factors such as biosafety, sustainability, and public safety to eliminate risks to drivers, passengers, and humanity overall. Another aspect of a safer future of mobility means maximizing the use of these automated driving systems that we have developed so far to support, augment, and replace human drivers and human contact where appropriate. For example, deliveries in suburban areas. And then for buildings, safety has already become one of the main focus areas because of the pandemic. Modern buildings were generally considered safe and healthy working environments. However, the potential for indoor air quality problems, occupational illnesses, and injuries, those are all a growing concern of people that need to be addressed by architects and facility managers to design and maintain buildings and processes that ensure occupant safety and health. And then lastly, it should be environmentally friendly and not only just electric. The air in certain places in 2020 is more toxic than some of the relationships I have been in. And man, have I been through some crazy ones in my lifetime. The news was full of pictures of the surrealistic yellow sky caused by the wildfires in the Bay Area and other places in the United States. On top of that, transportation nowadays is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions, and our cities play a significant role in shaping the choices we make to get around every day. Electrification of the vehicles is certainly one of the ways to reduce pollution and decrease the gas emissions, but decisions by policymakers and cities can fundamentally alter the trajectory of the mobility sector and its impact on the planet we live in. For real estate, one of the ongoing trends is leadership in energy and environmental design, or also known as LEED. It is the world's most widely used green building rating system to evaluate the environmental performance of a building. The ongoing population growth and rapid urbanization both bring along the necessity for more eco-friendly real estate development. As we are already seeing, buildings start to include renewable energy technologies and waste reduction technologies. The future of real estate marketing is looking more and more green in my eyes, and this is what people will be looking at. And just in general, we should be prioritizing moving people instead of cars to preserve our planet. So we've rushed through a lot of things. Let's touch upon a few things I wanted to address as the summary of this and wrap it all up. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for new technology and innovation, and I'm extremely stoked to see and use self-driving cars in my lifetime. However, I'm also curious to see what kind of unseen phenomena will emerge from the prevalence of autonomous vehicles. I still remember the days when I was a kid and the internet was about to become public. There was a lot of talk about how it would change the world we know in so many positive ways. In the meantime, if we have been online for a relatively short amount of time, and all of you here today definitely have been, I mean, you are online right now, you can easily see how many not so pleasant things have come from the internet that nobody really had the foresight to predict. And same applies to new ways of interacting with our homes and buildings we are in. So there's these general trends that are happening right now, but there's a lot of focus that should be put onto some of these close adherent technologies as well, such as safety, cybersecurity, and so forth. And then, of course, people are also concerned about millions and millions of people who would lose their jobs and be displaced, from trucking to insurance agents to police officers to lawyers. Also, a lot of the mom and pop shops in between cities where truckers often stop to have a bite and rest. Sure, that could happen, but we have had similar situations in the past as well. Artists and weavers lost demand for their craft after the introduction of mechanical looms. And we don't even have to look that far back. Retail cashiers were displaced by automated self-service tills. So instead of feeling doomed by automation taking over our jobs, we can also address and focus on preventing net job losses by creating new ones, improving availability to high quality education, including skills training for adults and other active labor market policies. And that could do with these adjacent technology areas that will emerge once the other ones will become a little bit more mainstream. Then creating a new type of community on a smaller level could be our future as well. If you remember the graph I was describing, the residential neighborhoods all the way to the downtown area. Because the available land in the cities is scarce, and if there's something we can learn from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's the fact that a lot of us can actually work from home and remotely. If we can find ways to create environments where people can live, work, build a family, and buy goods, it could mean that a lot of the traffic and congestion we all load so much is in the past too. And then lastly, we have to work on our future now. The bigger tech trends in the mobility and real estate space we discussed earlier might come true one day, but we also need to act on the current problems and environmental changes we are experiencing to preserve our planet. By now, companies in the automotive and mobility space have already run into problems with their own framework. And I believe we need a framework that's better suited to depict the needed innovation in mobility and real estate. I propose the updated case 2.0, if you will, that focuses on cost efficiency, accessibility, safety, and environment. All of these elements can be applied to the infrastructure layer that serves as the foundation. Systems that connect the physical and digital worlds as well as specific applications for us to use as the end users to get around, and for larger enterprises to monetize their technology and products. If we do things right, we don't have to think about how mobility will shape the future of real estate. Mobility will be the future of real estate and our lives overall. And one thing to keep in mind is the fact that the future is now, and we need to address this right now. So with that being said, I would like to thank everyone who attended this session. I would love to give a huge thank you to Shadow Summit and all the organizers, the team behind that, from the bottom of my heart. And obviously, I would love to chat with any of you if you're interested and passionate about this topic, if you have any other opinions. Again, the future is now. We need to address this. And if you are a startup company working on technologies related to this, if you are a corporation that is looking for technologies to build a more sustainable future in real estate, as well as if you're just generally interested, then please connect with me. I'm also on Slack that Shadow Ventures has set up, so I'll see you there as well. But now I'll tune out and I'll let the next speaker take over the stage today. Thank you, guys.